Did you all have Barbies?
My sister had 1,000 Barbies.
Your sister did.
Yeah,
did you
it was
play
a lot of,
with
like,
the Barbies?
Horse Barbies. I didn't play with them so much as I snuck into a room and undressed them when nobody was around because I was a very sheltered, strange boy. So that was my experience with Barbies. I did the literal Barbie song thing where I undressed them everywhere. It's my Barbie experience.
Okay.
We're behind the play wall here, so it's okay.
The play wall?
The play wall, paywall.
Hey,
Yeah.
there we go.
The playhouse,
Paywall,
the
yeah.
paywall, the
Yeah.
play wall.
What happens behind the paywall?
Patrick, your childhood Barbie experiences?
To speak to the question before answering the question, I want to say, right? Okay. I actually had a dollhouse. I had the Playmobil Victorian dollhouse. I had all the little rooms. I loved that shit. Like, probably, Incipient Proustianism, but also you could bring in the cowboy Playmobil and play like Hostage Crisis in the big Belle Epoque like thing. That was awesome. I did not have any Barbies. My sister had a bunch of Barbies. The age difference, my sister is 6 years younger than me, so the age difference was a little bit in terms of playing. I did, however, have at some point, I presume in the early 90s, does Mattel also own G.I. Joe, or is that a Hasbro?
No, that's Hasbro.
Right.
But it is a classic crossover to make Barbie and G.I. Joe. Like I think like in like the headcanon of many children, G.I. Joe is, and not Ken, is actually Barbie's
boyfriend.
Partner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Partner is really not the right word here. Boyfriend.
Yes. Yeah.
But I did have at some point, I think it's in the early
Lover.
90s, maybe
Wait,
late.
no, not that. Not that.
Fling.
She has a
Sorry, Patrick.
stable of G.I. Joes. She has like all SEAL Team 6.
Well,
She lives in military housing. And when he's
well, they
away.
don't have housing, right? They're in the barracks, and she's in the dream house.
And that is why there is no sexual relationship, which is going to keep coming back to. But
it's going to be one of the themes of this episode.
I did have I think it was in the early 80s. Sorry, early 90s. Sorry, I'm a little tired. Hasbro released like the classic G.I. Joes, like the throwback ones, like to the original G.I. Joes, right? And our initial, maybe our mental
the
image.
ones that got their education paid for.
Yeah,
the GI
yeah,
Bill.
yeah, like the GI Bill, GI Joes, but it was like they weren't like the like ninjas with lasers type shit. Though I think we maybe should compare those GI Joe movies to this thing in some ways. But they were the same scale as Barbie.
Yeah,
right. They were the full like 12 inches. They were done as like typical, as opposed to being sort of sci-fi type stuff. They were like typical soldiers from typical wars. So I had like the Desert Storm 1 guy. I had the World War II guy, and they had clothes that you could take off with like zippers and whatever, or not really zipper, Velcro. They had guns and stuff. The boots fit, and they were exactly the same size. They also did not have genitals, though they were like cut in the sense of being.
They had guns. They had
guns.
Genitals.
They did not, but they had like nude colored like briefs on. and sometimes we would play, my sister and I would play with these things together. And then I do also remember, though, I think being in someone else's house, played it with someone's friend, maybe his sister, and this was like, we were like 12 or something, like, so right on this threshold age. And I remember she had like a big Barbie like bed type thing. And he's like, wow. And there was like a journalist G.I. Joe too. There was like a war journalist G.I. Joe or something and you can see where this is going. So there's a camera in play and he's like, let's make a porno. And I'm like, what is going on here? I just want a fucking juice box. And I don't think I had to play date with that friend again.
You guys probably, because you consume an entirely different internet than I do by virtue of the ways that gender sorts human beings. You probably don't know what Barbie foot is, not like in the context of this film, but in the context of Instagram poses.
I'm imagining a pink Sasquatch right now.
No. You none of you can see me doing this, and I don't wear heels anyway, but Barbie foot is like one of the things that like the Kardashians and a lot of other influencers, they will do to make their legs look longer is they'll do the
stand on your tippy toes.
Yeah. In all contexts that they're being photographed, they will do Barbie foot. And it's something that has spread. So like that was like one of the dark kind of, I mean, this whole film left me with, an absolute feeling of, despair, what Kierkegaard would call the sickness unto death, was definitely the affect of the Barbie film for me. Oh, I guess I didn't tell you about my Barbie experience.
No,
No,
yeah,
I'm waiting.
No, yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, I hated Barbie. And I never had my own Barbies, but I'm a younger sister, and my older sister had Barbies and horses, the two genders, according to this film. Not real horses. She didn't have real horses. I didn't grow up in that kind of family. And she's significantly older. So like the Barbies were hand-me-downs. And the only memory I have, because I know I never acquired any of these, is I fucking hated these. And I have a memory of being in the backyard, like the suburban backyard on like a picnic blanket or whatever with people. I don't even remember who they are now, just destroying the shit out of these Barbies. So the only moment in this film that, well, it's not the only moment that I liked, but early on, like very, very early on, when you see the kids just being like, we want to destroy these. Right. I was like, okay, in this sort of like, this is like the film's like Kleinian moment is is like the sort of like, inchoate rage of the child for the object. That's the part that I liked about this film. And that's also the only part that ever resonated with me about, what was like, for me, like the idea of Barbie, I knew really, really early on growing up in like a very feminist household was like, this shit was fucked.
Yeah.
And this movie has not made me revise that.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just been thinking a lot. And I think what I really want to say is that, I want to push you around. Well, I will. I want to push you down. Well, I will. I want to take you for granted. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, happy birthday to me.
Yeah.
Let me peel the back of my hand off my forehead.
Yeah. I'm smoother than Rob Thomas, featuring Carlos Santana.
That was funny. Okay, that wasn't a courtesy chuckle. That was an actual. That was an actual laugh. To Ordinary Unhappiness, a podcast about psychoanalysis, politics, pop culture, and the ways we suffer now. I'm Abby Kluchin.
I'm Patrick Blanchfield.
I'm Danielle.
And today we are behind what Patrick has accidentally termed the play wall, as in paywall / Barbie's Playhouse. I don't know if it really works, but we're just going to go with it for the moment.
It was a parapraxis.
It was a parapraxis. It's a neologism. We're talking about Barbie.
I would love to see Mattel's adaptation of Winnicott's life, and it would be called Behind the Playwall.
Yes. 2 warnings here. 1, we will yuck your yum if you are a person who loved the Barbie movie. And 2, there will be spoilers. So just be warned.
Yeah.
I thought that this should have dealt more with play, considering that it ostensibly hinges on, the mechanism that sets things in motion is that stereotypical Barbie all of a sudden, starts malfunctioning, and we find out that it's because the child playing with her, which actually turns out to be the mom of the child, is having some existential crisis feelings.
I think it's interesting, like, to think about this from the perspective of play, and maybe we can get into talking about psychoanalysis and play and Winnicott and play and the idea of like the transitional object, or like the lovey, the thing you play with as you develop more triangulated and complex relationships to object permanence and to the people around you. But the 2 things that immediately struck me when you said that, Abby, are 1, there aren't a lot of children playing. If anything, the children are. And I'm using this word not to ratify it or to like approve it, but I'm like thinking about like writer's room Argo and how it was cast. They made the daughter like woke, like she's the one checking, like calling her dad, doing appropriation for speaking Spanish and saying "si se puede." She's the one who like has all the various ism buzzwords. Like, so like it's not a film. The children are not actually playful, and weirdly enough, the children don't even seem to rediscover the joys of play. If anything,
they're the adults.
Yeah.
The child is the only adult.
If anything, it's like, the only whatever is happening, the audience are adults nostalgically looking back to their experience of play. And I was thinking, I think I want to talk later about how this gave me a lot of like Whedon-esque vibes in some way too. But like on the very basic level, if I don't know, the Avengers movies are about selling toys that you can go buy right now at Walmart or Target that are cranked out for every movie. This was like featuring the discontinued Barbies or the old Barbies that you remember now and that maybe we're going to re-release as a new edition. But in any event, it wasn't like selling new products
on eBay. Exactly. And I can't imagine that they're getting less in price or lower in price.
Yeah.
That was all I was thinking.
Yeah.
There were whole sequences where they would like stop the action to show clothes flying towards characters, and they would like freeze and open up and title them, and the characters would say, "Oh, that's vintage. Oh, that's a discontinued jacket. Please don't damage that." And the entire time I was just thinking about eBay and the prices of these things going up because now it's like officially sanctioned collectible. Yeah.
It was like they make that joke, which normally a person like me would love about like the Proust Barbie type thing. But this was like, no, we're going to product placement Madeleines every 20 seconds, but they're not things that your kids are going to want to buy. They're things that you're going to buy for your kid because you want your kid to have the vicarious experience, like the experience vicariously that you maybe once did or didn't have. And then just the second thing, the only playfulness in the movie, which actually felt weirdly inert to me, was like the trope type of playful, like the playful gestures. And I hated that. I want to talk about that much more, but that was the stuff that had me screaming "fuck you" a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's. Are you apologizing for saying "fuck you"?
Well, no, I don't want to get too. I want to be clear. Like I wanted to like this movie. Like I left it being like, oh my God, I would just much rather watch that classic LL Cool J Robin Williams vehicle Toys again, right? Which I think is a much more interesting relationship to.
Yeah. Well, I think, the promise of this, and I should say, we saw this yesterday. Okay. So like I think, Dan, did you see it in the theater when it came out?
No, my wife did. I saw it yesterday.
Okay.
As well.
So we all like skipped out on the, like, we're going to see Barbie when it comes out. Although I will say, Patrick and I were on vacation. And I was like, I want to see this because I love like a movie that embraces femme aesthetics. And leading up to watching this for the pod, we watched Legally Blonde, we watched Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, we watched all of these things that are actually very much setting into question this sort of like, can you be femme or even high femme presenting and be taken seriously, right? Like that those are the sort of the central tension in some of those films. And I love a lot of those films. And in fact, like I am at the point in my life where like I don't really want to watch movies that have to do with men very much. So I was like, the Barbie movie, like I'm sure I'll find it like cleverly subversive, even though I actually hate Barbie. And even though this is basically product placement on a grand scale, that I'll find it in some way. I'll find some way to like teach it in gender studies. And then I just felt so sad. And so like, it was such a dysphoric movie experience. And I finally got to read some of the criticism that I'd been holding off on. Like N+1 did this whole really excellent, highly recommend, cluster of essays. And a friend of the pod, Christine Smallwood, has this line that I feel like encapsulates more than anything, like the emotional response I had to this film, which is as follows. If I'm going to be spiritually murdered by capitalism and nostalgia, I don't want to be winked at while it's happening.
That the winking at type stuff. And I kept being struck by one of the things that we found, I think, collectively so abhorrent in the Joss Whedon films, right? Which are pastiche, right? Are these moments in which anytime there's a moment, like bracket all the trauma stuff, right? Which, people can go back to episode number, whatever, for that if they want to hear about that. But like anytime substantive plot happens, and Dan, you said this, right? There's like how did you frame it? Like there's like a throwaway,
it's
right?
Pathos to bathos. It's the like something massive happens that's really substantively important, like a character dies or two characters profess their love, and then the camera pans to the left, and there's a guy juggling apples, and he drops an apple, and everybody laughs.
Yeah, Thanos kills half the galaxy, like trillions of people, so like, and that just happened,
right?
I mean, it which is, it both like gives you stakes and then diffuses them.
It doesn't let you. It doesn't want you to feel hard. It wants you to feel things, and then it gives you permission to stop feeling things because you're just here to have fun. You're not here to learn. You're here to have fun.
It wants you to have the feeling of having feelings without having to connect those feelings.
Yes.
Right. It's this quintessentially nostalgic kind of enterprise. But a lot of the gestures here were these ones where it was like I keep thinking about even the Helen Mirren narration in this way, like there comes where like here's what I'm thinking about, like the way in which the playful gesture, what it does is it turns to and implicates the audience, right? And sometimes I remember this has come up in some film studies examples, and I'm not entirely sure if it's true or otherwise, but we've all seen that kind of also has an age well classic Animal House, right?
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that, right?
I watched like the first 5 minutes and I was like, absolutely not. This is not what I'm doing with my one wild and precious life.
That's entirely fine. I mean, like it's in National Lampoon, like it's classic in some way, but like we don't need to get too much into it. But there is what's interesting about it, and again, this may be apocryphal, but there is one scene in which the Jim Belushi character, who among other things is in like his 8th year of college or whatever, he just lives in the frat, he's always doing these drunken hijinks type things, right? And in one of the scenes, he peeps into a sorority window. He literally gets like a 2-story ladder, leans it against the wall, and then climbs up. And inside the young co-eds, so to speak, are having the archetypal fantasy of like a pajama pillow fight type thing. Mm-hmm. And he's watching, right? And my understanding, what I've been told by a bunch of different people, and again, this may be apocryphal, is that when they first ran this, audiences were actually horrified because they were like, this guy, apart from a few minutes ago, he was just the funny drunk guy who hangs around the frat all the time, right? Who like he's the one who has a shirt that just says college on it, right? They were like, this is horrifying. This is transgressive. It crosses a line, right? So they kept the scene, but they added an additional element, right? So he still brings the ladder up against the wall of double delta or whatever the shitty pun is, climbs up, looks into the window. You see the girls having the pajama pillow fight, like tops are starting to come off. And then he turns around, looks over his shoulder, looks directly into the camera and winks. And that was enough to make people laugh, or at least be like, okay, now we're no longer dealing with like this sort of predatory sexual guy. We are in on the joke in some way, and thus we get to consume this thing because the implication actually both, it brings us in and it diffuses it in this way that's like a little bit something about the layering of representation.
Breaking of the fourth wall somehow.
Yeah, it produces,
even though it actually makes the character out to be more fucked up.
Yeah,
somehow allows the audience.
Yeah. Well, he becomes less than a totally human character, right? We know he becomes
he's
like
an avatar.
Yeah, of the audience. And I kept on thinking about that in the sense that, and I'm speaking here as someone who loves my favorite movies are postmodern shit show failure spectacles that make you feel bad and weird about consumption.
Yeah. And you love a postmodern pastiche.
Yes.
Really.
Like my favorite movie, which I'm still going to get you both to watch by hook or crook, is the director's Cannes cut of Southland Tales, which I think is one of the most amazing movies for understanding a whole period of American history. But beyond that, and also, yeah,
sure,
okay. Really, I mean, you're committing to 3.5 hours here, right? But like,
I'm in.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say Sallow, and I was like, oh.
Well, I've sat through Sallow a couple times.
I know, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to.
I think some people should be forced to watch Sallow, not you. But I feel like a lot of our fascism conversations in this country will be fucking different. We had to deal with that type of thing instead of, I don't know, like Schindler's List. And just to clarify that aside here, my contempt here for Schindler's List is not like a contempt for like what it represents per se, but for the fact of that it makes representation. I'm with Michael Haneke in this. If you've seen that interview that he does with John Krasinski, where he's like, you can't make art like this, but like suspense about like gas coming out of the nozzles in a gas chamber is not. That's like there's something wrong there. But the point is here. What this film did, there were a couple moments, one of which I have a couple other examples that I'll get to later, I'm sure, but like one of the ones where it was like, Margot Robbie is in crisis, and she's like, I don't even feel beautiful anymore. I don't even feel like I'm a good Barbie or whatever. And then the Helen Mirren voiceover says,
note to the filmmakers, Margot Robbie is the wrong person to cast if you want to make this point.
But they did fucking cast Margot Robbie, right? So they're still doing it. The knowing gesture doesn't actually change it. In some ways, it actually makes it worse.
Yes.
And this combined with all these other things, like, I don't even, we'll talk more about it later, but there was this layering of like implication type gesture that it made me angry. I can't really, yeah.
There's a Greta Gerwig quote that cuts to the heart of what you were just saying. I think kind of now famously, I think it was for a New Yorker piece, but I could be mistaken, when asked about how she was going to tackle Barbie for a modern audience. She said, I want to do the big spectacle thing, but also subvert it at the same time.
Yes, it is famous now. And I think that is one of the things that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Even just the very idea of like what it is to subvert the thing. But I think it might be helpful, although we could definitely just kind of riff in this vein for a while. Can we kind of run through what actually happens in this film so we can tether some of what we're saying to some plot points and whatnot?
Spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen this movie, go watch it, legally or otherwise.
No, don't watch it.
Don't.
Actually, just listen. Don't watch it.
Man, I've got a completely different take on all this than you guys. So, all right, I'm excited.
Okay, so
I would say go watch it.
At the beginning, we get the origin story of dolls, right? And we get, of course, this, like, speaking of postmodern pastiche, we get the 2001 monolith.
Only it's a 14-foot tall Margot Robbie in that original
her
swimsuit.
Can
I give you a little backstory about that swimsuit?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Who was the founder of Mattel? What was her name?
Oh, Ruth.
Handler, is it?
Yeah.
Ruth Handler?
I think so.
Yeah. I didn't know she invented the whole company.
Yeah. So
okay. So it's Ruth Handler who creates Barbie after her daughter Barbara.
Well, she didn't create Barbie so much as she went overseas to a German city, and she saw a newsstand that's sold like porno mags and newspapers and stuff like that. And up with the porno mags is this little posable, undressable doll that largely was marketed towards men, that was wearing the striped swimsuit. And the whole appeal to it was, here's an anatomically correct doll that you can put inside of your truck or whatever, and then undress it when you're bored. It was a plaything for men. She saw it, got fixated on it, bought 40 or 50 of them, went home with them, reverse engineered them, and invented Barbie.
Right.
So there's your...
Not anatomically
There's
correct.
The monolith. And that was actually a little fun fact that I was expecting to see nodded at.
Yeah.
Barbie's very adult origins, but they glossed right over that.
Yeah.
Completely glossed over it.
Yeah. Glossed right on over that.
Yeah.
For sure.
So our monolith, striped bathing suit, adult plaything. Whatever.
Yeah. And of course, this is, we would be remiss as a psychoanalytic podcast to not say that this is Barbie is the phallus, right? That is like the opening image is like, she's towering over, and there are these kids who were previously playing with all these dolls, and like it's supposed to be disrupting the idea that playing with dolls is about rehearsing for maternity, right? I mean, I think it's like pretty much hits you over the head with it.
Helen Mirren says this explicitly. The only dolls in the world are the ones that could teach you to be a mother, and that could be fun to be a mother, but just as mothers, sometimes it isn't that fun.
But the dolls were always and forever baby dolls. The girls who played with them could only ever play at being mothers, which can be fun, at least for a while anyway. Ask your mother. This continued until...
Which brings me to another one of my problems with this film, which is it is overwhelmingly didactic and yet somehow does not have a point of view all at once. Anyway, so then we get this nice moment, which is sort of Kleinian gleeful destruction of like children, like killing representations of other children, but which is also supposed to be killing the idea that they are only fit to be mothers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sure, that's kind of nice.
I wanted so much more the baby gets one of these baby dolls gets chucked in the air, kind of like the I don't know, like the bits of bones or the stick in the Kubrick thing, and I really wanted them to lean a bit more into the destruction of the toys. Like I wanted some Hans Belmer shit. I wanted like weird like, composite toy, like something you might like a Louis Bourgeois thing.
Sid from Toy Story.
It's all pastiche. Like why not stick parts of Barbies on other like the ways that children actually do this, the way that children really play.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe is not just fucking Barbie. G.I. Joe is actually like being mashed up together with Barbie and like, like all of that kind of stuff.
You break your toys as a way to love them, Right. But this was
Right?
all that the play was just as scripted in another way. It replaced the scriptedness of being the mother with being, well, as Helen Mirren narrates, right? Barbie then came to stand in for the fact that women could be anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so women are, well, not women, Barbies. There are no
Sorry,
women
Barbie.
in this movie. There are only Barbies, except for America Ferrera, who then at the end decides to invent Ordinary Barbie to really stand in for all women. At that point, I leaned over to Patrick and said, Ordinary Barbie is capitalist realism Barbie. Anyway, there are no women in this movie. There is no such thing as a sexual relation in this movie. We are in Barbie land and the Barbies have dream houses. And can we just like pause for a moment to talk about how this landed for all of us? Because even if you hated this movie as much as I did, like you have to respect a lot of what they did in terms of building an aesthetic and like, you know, the people who were working behind the scenes did an incredible job here. So how did you all feel in Barbie? And I'm especially interested in like I'm the only person here who is the target audience demographically speaking for this film. Clearly, I'm politically not the correct audience for it. But demographically, I am. This movie is aimed at me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm an elder millennial, straight woman married to a man.
They are hoping
Right.
the movie works on you the same way it works on the younger girl in this movie, where it will be a vehicle through which your potential daughter can see you more accurately.
I mean, but it is part of this whole, it is aimed at millennial women. Like, I buy Gnossienne. Why didn't I buy this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Like the, but I want to know like what you all who are being to the extent that you are being interpolated into this movie, you're Ken. So how did you feel when you landed?
I beached
in
so hard.
Barbie?
No, the first vibe that I got was I hadn't been blown away by physical sets and art design that was so pinpoint accurate to like a vibe that they're shooting for, since it's weird to draw a line from Barbie to like Wes Craven. But if you watch those original like Nightmare on Elm Street movies where the dreamscapes were so fully realized and just on screen popped out and hit a tone so hard, it reminded me of early Wes Craven, early Tim Burton, where like the sets are a character in the movie too.
Yeah.
That's
and
right.
I thought they were fucking gorgeous.
Uh,
Beautiful.
Gorgeous is not the word that I want, but they are amazing. They are spectacular in the full sense of the word.
And it didn't feel. I know there was abundant CGI in there, but it didn't feel like shitty CGI. Everything, the costumes, or even like the bits when they're driving or moving through the waves, and the waves, it felt properly theatrical. It actually reminded me, kind of, and generationally, I'm almost the same cadre as Gerwig. It reminded me of some of the more clever college theater productions I saw from very precocious college or theater kids. Like they nailed a particular aesthetic, and with a limited budget, they were able to do it. So it had this a little bit of Wes Anderson there too in terms of the palette, right? But like. And hell, I will say too, there were some scenes that reminded me, particularly the scenes of all the Kens on the beach, reminded me a lot of Fassbender's adaptation of Gene's Querelle, the gay sailors murder movie, right? Where everything is done in like this kind of like golden hour, but like more orangey or pink and black. It was lush in this way, and it was interesting how that kind of didn't translate quite nice. There's some interesting stuff that happened in terms of the comparison that when they eventually do go to the real world, and like that line Helen Mirren has about like trading the plastics of the Barbie land for the plastics of the other one. We can explore that.
Wah,
but,
wah,
yeah, which honestly I think actually again was another one of these gestures that seemed knowing but undid
on
it.
the nose.
Yeah.
Don't insult me.
Like she still goes back to Sensory City in the
I have
end.
a brain.
Right? Yeah, but the other thing about it too is that one thing I liked about it was this sense that it did give you the image of like, here are all the toys you collected. Like the pans up when you saw the entire town going. It reminded me of like sometimes like when you were a kid, and you remember like I don't think they make many of these commercials quite like this anymore, but the commercials where it'll be a bunch of kids playing in like a park or a living room with all the toys.
Yeah.
And you'd have the image.
Micro Machines, yeah.
Or G.I. Joe type stuff, or Dino Riders, or
Playmobil with the famous Matt.
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of like, it wasn't quite like, like you go into some guy's basement and he's built it, the town with like train sets or whatever, but it was like, oh, here is a world where all the different things you could have had are all collected in a busy bustling city. You have like the complete Lego set of something or whatever, and the world, but it's not just like a table in a finished basement. It's not it's a whole world that had that sense of completion and totality of the entire brand. And that was impressive.
Did you feel compelled to identify with Ken?
No, I don't watch movies. I think I watched this with a completely different frame of reference than you guys. I went into this expecting to watch corporate propaganda.
Yeah.
And I've seen films like this done before. Like Transformers is a great example of a movie that I went into the first one in the theater expecting to see some like, guns, action, explosions, and not much more. And it still kind of failed at that just because the CGI was so bad. The art direction was not that great in those movies. And I never watched another one after that. So I went into this expecting bland milquetoast, toe the very bottom progressive line that you possibly can without offending half of your potential market, and then let Mattel look a little bad while also hoisting up all the IP that they stand to profit off of.
Sure.
And my expectations were pretty solidly met.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I think by those criteria, 100%.
As a commercial, I found it watchable. So no, I didn't identify with Ken, although I did find Ken hysterical. Ryan Gosling was so much
amazing.
fun. Yes.
He stole the show, which is another part of, no disrespect to Margot Robbie. Both of them did outstanding performances.
I'm not sure that there was a bad performance in the bunch, to be honest.
No. Patrick, did you feel compelled to identify with Ken? I'm actually like kind of using your own, like, who are we being asked to identify with question.
I mean, I felt continual appeals to interpolate and to have some sort of sham empathy being performed, or like sham grievance, like constantly. It felt like I was like the Katamari Damacy guy, like just this giant ball of like of scooping up these bids from this universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, like some of the experiences that Ken has of being like, well, literally castrated, or like really wanting to spend the night and not being, like being like, I love you, but like, why can't we do it? Or just being like, I want to be like looking the desire to be the object of desire of the other. Like, sure, like on some basic template, yes. On another level, though, like Ken was he was so plastic in a great way, right? But I couldn't, and even also too, like I don't understand actually how his pecs and chest work. Like he looked like he'd been built in ways that it's not possible.
That's just the magic of Gosling.
Like you shouldn't have muscles over that part of your rib cage. I don't think it didn't seem to make sense to me. But
that part made sense to me.
Okay. I mean, for me, look, the Ryan Gosling of my heart is always going to be the Ryan Gosling from Drive, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I want that jacket. I would rock the fuck out of that jacket.
I identified with him.
I have not seen this, and I don't actually care for Ryan Gosling particularly.
You gotta watch Drive.
It's such a good neo-noir, babe.
Dude, I just rewatched it like 2 weeks ago.
We were performing the like, have you seen The Godfather? What, you haven't seen Godfather?
I know, it's all
I hated that.
Exceptionally overdetermined.
Wait, the Twitter shout-outs, like, we're going to do auteur Twitter fights in this movie? Fuck you. I do not want to hear Barbie and Ken talking about whether or not Scorsese glorifies violence. Fuck you. Sorry.
You can tell them that you've never seen The Godfather and that you'd love them to explain it to you.
Ooh, are you guys watching The Godfather?
The Godfather.
I've never seen it.
Oh my God, you've never seen The Godfather? This movie is a rich blend of Coppola's aesthetic genius and a triumph to Robert Evans and the architecture of the 70s studio system.
Can you start the movie over and just talk through the whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the similar fuck you, but in a way that's sort of like, okay, so there's this film, and we're like, okay, we haven't made movies for women in an awfully long time, but here's the one you're going to get. It is going to be a commercial. It's going to be a commercial for a thing that contributed to the negative body image of so many women. And then the guiding question behind it is like, what if men were the second sex? Like that is what this film is about. Is like, okay, so we read Simone de Beauvoir and we kind of got the idea that the feminine ideal harms real women. Yeah. But what are the implications for men? Yeah. Like that's still the heart of the fucking movie. Is Ryan Gosling's crisis is actually more, I think it lands harder than Barbie, because Barbie doesn't have a personality to begin with. They're like, guys, do you ever think about dying? It's like, oh, it's so funny because it's the collision of these two opposites. One, vapid blonde femininity, and two, deep thoughts.
Yeah.
So it doesn't land in any way where she's a character, whereas like Gosling, Ken, whatever, has like actual grievances, and the grievances that he has are the grievances that women have.
Yes.
Yet they're given to Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
I mean, Ken, to figure out whether he can be Ken-enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the promise, like again, delivered in this moment where like, is this subversive or is this actually like gesturing at subversive, but in a way that actually reinscribes everything that's bad? Like the Helen Mirren thing, like someday.
The answer is yes.
Someday we shall have a world where maybe women will make 100 cents on a dollar and men will make the 87 cents. Or it was something like grim, like it wasn't quite like as bald. It's like what's the line? It's like maybe we'll arrive at a state of affairs where women will have just as much power as men, or vice, like some sort of weird zero sum.
This essential, supposedly feminist, although obviously like girl boss corporate feminist, whatever movie, is that women give up more of their power. That is what actually happens. And I want to say, like, here's something I have not seen in the copious literature on Barbie, is that I think this should actually be situated in what is quite a rich tradition of feminist utopian literature.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking here, this is a kind of a deep cut, but I know we have a lot of listeners that are really into sci-fi because they talk about it to us on Patreon. We love you. Please never stop telling us about your love for sci-fi. But like Sherry Tepper's The Gate to Women's Country, or even like, I don't know, like there's some like Starhawk. I'm talking like often a lot of this is like real second wave, but it's not just in America. Like Monique Wittig does this also, and there's basically a sort of like, okay, what if we realized that the problem that, okay, I'm putting words into these people's mouths, but I'm going to do it because it's my fucking podcast, whatever. The problem that Freud diagnoses in Civilization and Its Discontents, right? We are, not just that life is too hard for us, but that we all fundamentally want to fucking kill each other.
Yeah.
What if the problem with that is actually a male problem?
Yeah.
I'm not endorsing this view. Let me just be really clear. I'm just saying that this is sort of, and so in a lot of these sorts of like feminist utopian literary experiments, it's like, well, what if we just built a society where there could be an actual social contract that's upheld? Everything happens in these generally sort of like horizontal and collaborative ways. And now I'm thinking specifically about Sherry Tepper, but they all handle them in different ways. We got to do something with the men. They go live in their own warlike society where they can have fake fights that with like actual consequences in the sense that they keep killing each other. And it's but we do want to keep the human race going. So we'll have to find some sort of way to have like sexual assignations. But fundamentally, the only way to have a functional society is to isolate the men and give them something warlike to do, to occupy themselves, which is essentially meaningless. And then we can get on with the business of genuinely imagining what a world should look like. Yeah. And I do think we have to understand Barbie in that lineage. It is, because that's what we get at the very beginning, is we get men have no property. Yeah. Right? We don't know where they live. I mean, this is actually, I think, the most important turning point in the film is when Ken expropriates Barbie's dream house, right?
No, Ken, this is my dream house. It is my dream house. It's mine.
No, this is no longer Barbie's dream house. This shall henceforth be known as Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House.
I do think, I don't know, does that make sense to situate it in that way?
It does. I mean, like, I think,
but but then the society is like, that's the part, is like, there's no, like, well, let's think about what this would look like. It's just like, every day is the same. Everybody is Barbie.
Yes.
Like, that's the part, and this is the part that had me yelling, is like, hi Barbie, hi Barbie, hi Barbie,
Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
I was just like, I don't want to be a Barbie. I want to be a person, you know, like the idea that like Barbie is president, but there's no social problems. There's this, everyone on the Supreme Court is a woman, but there's no like
The case that they got,
it's all about sameness fundamentally.
Yes, it liquidates
it liquidates, like the film poses this sort of like, this is about the question of sexual difference. And then it really is fundamentally all about sameness.
Yeah. I mean, like the only case, we don't even glimpse a case before the Supreme Court. We just have someone basically saying, one of the Barbies, she's like, well, I have a logical argument here. And also my emotions are part of that. And actually my emotionality and my rationality can consist to make me a more formidable lawyer. And it was like, that's very true. But also we don't know what wasn't aware if there was an opposing counsel or what they were deciding. It was just this expressive thing followed by affirmation. And it seemed to get at this, you know, whether it be like what we were just talking about in terms of like, well, yeah, all boys go to like War Valhalla and all girls go to like this weird corporate plastic world where everyone is interpolated into being different shades of perfect and there is no real difference. It felt like there was no possibility of an outside.
Okay.
And it seems so tethered to the binaries of gender that you were talking about. Yeah.
So we'll get to that. That's my like overall thesis about this film, which I will bury in typical ordinary and happiness fashion towards the end of this episode. But let's actually move on with the plot. So what happens? We're in Barbie land. Everything is sameness. And then every night is girls' night. And at girls' night, Barbie in the thing that you have, even if you have stayed away, wiser souls than we are from the internet, you have doubtless seen the image of Margot Robbie being like,
Do you guys ever think about dying?
and so, you know, the plot moves on because as, you know, Barbie's having an existential crisis, her feet go flat and, you know, she's being plagued by cellulite, all of these things. So she goes to visit Weird Barbie, which is, I believe, Kate McKinnon.
Yes.
And difference embodied.
By the way, one of my favorite podcasts, Every Outfit, who contributed to my believing that I was going to like this film. They were like, why is there no Barbie scissoring in this film? Speaking of ways that kids play with Barbies, is they make Barbie scissor, and they were like, okay, that's actually the Kate McKinnon always being in the splits. And I was like, oh, okay, that is an interesting moment. Anyway, the point is that the plot is set in motion. We leave Barbie land to go to the real world because Weird Barbie is like, all right, the kid that is playing with you is like spinning out, and you have to go and fix this. Which, by the way, really to me, I was like, all children are doing strange things with their. I was like, how can this be the one time? Like one person in the real world? Because we're given to understand that there's some sort of like psychic/physical link between every given Barbie in Barbie land and the child that's playing with her. But like, have you ever met a child? They're all working. Like this is you can ask Anna Freud and you can ask Melanie Klein, two people that never agreed on anything. They will both tell you that children's play is meaningful and it's violent.
Yep.
Right. I mean, especially Melanie Klein will tell you that. So that's weird, first of all. But whatever, it's the plot point. We go to the real world.
It seems just on this point too that like the film invites us to think of some type of metaphysics, right? And I'm not saying that this film, I'm not, please let me be very clear. I'm not like faulting Barbie, the movie, for having insufficient lore, because lore is bullshit in most movies, or for like having like a flawed ontology or some shit. But like there is this way in which like you're given this vision of like every young girl has their Barbie, and it is every girl, right? It uses this language. It's not every child. It's not every kid. You can't, apparently, I'm wondering if there are boys that play with Barbie in the real world. Apparently not.
Not in this universe.
Not in this universe. So again, this is queuing up
The two genders again.
So every girl has their Barbie. Each Barbie is their girl. Presumably no boys play with Barbies. And also that play is sort of like specific. And I found myself thinking, I'm like, that story of like the child losing interest in their toy or the child's distress being expressed in the toy. That is, I think, a beautiful and venerable and generative trope or plot device, right?
Yeah, dude, the Velveteen Rabbit.
Exactly, the Velveteen Rabbit, Puff the Magic Dragon, or like that wonderful animated movie,
The Giving Tree. Although we hate on this podcast, we hate The Giving Tree.
I was thinking of The Brave Little Toaster, which is one of my favorite movies ever. That movie made me cry so much as a child. Again, toys as well, I think is really remarkable. Or like, even like, I'm sorry to do auteur cinema, but like Citizen Kane and the role of like the Rosebud sled and that shit. Spoiler alert, by the way, Rosebud's a fucking sled for anyone who hasn't seen that one.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Sorry. But like that is interesting, right? And so for a brief moment, I thought, wow, what if the child that's in question, that's making Barbie think about death, has to confront death?
Yeah.
What if the child is growing older? What if the child's mother is dying? And there came that moment where I wanted that type of poignancy, but instead, when we go to the real world, we find out that it's what's actually at stake is nostalgia, and the child is basically too cool for Barbie.
Yeah.
Like, there's no island of misfit toys. There's no like, I mean, also just let's just be real for 1 second. In the real world, in the one we inhabit, Barbies don't die because they're made of plastic. And so there probably is an entire like Rhode Island sized patch of the great ocean like garbage
much
thing that's
bigger than
nothing
that, I
but
imagine.
Barbies, right?
She will outlive all of us.
Yeah, but there's right now some whale is like dying because its blowhole has been plugged by like half of a Ken. But like there was no what I was looking for, I guess here's what I'm trying to articulate. I wasn't so much concerned with the relationship between the fantasy world of the Barbies and the real world of LA, which is when you get right down to it, it's about as fake and plastic as you can get too. Because in some ways, also when we do get there, we learn out that actually Mattel is itself a fantasy company, right? It's not the real Mattel, even the jokes it makes that are like knowing like, we did tax fraud, or we're actually patriarchy. Like these jokes are also like these ironic things that, you make them look worse somehow. But I wanted some sort of actual connection to aging, intergenerational stuff, and otherwise. And we got a few brief glimmers of it in the beginning when the mother was, when we turn out it's the mother who's been taking the toys out of storage, etc. We got some brief flashbacks to her playing with the daughter. And that may be the scene that the movie wants to sell, right? Middle-aged woman, buy your kids, take the Barbies out of storage, buy your daughter a Barbie, explain what it meant to it. Now at least you can connect with your daughter, right? Because of course the daughter in this is, again, she is woke trademarked right in this way, like she's this too cool for, and she apparently has no enjoyment or senses. We never see her play with anything. She's like
glued to her phone. The kids these days
glued to her phone. She
calls
does
Barbie
She's
a
not
fascist.
glued to her phone.
Well,
She has friends.
She has friends, but even the friends are like glowering, and like we see very little childlike joy.
Yeah.
Right. But we also see very little.
You clearly were never a middle school girl. There is no childlike joy.
I wanted to die in middle school.
Yeah.
Like I'm
just saying.
I
That seems fine.
No, I understand that, but if the theme is of play, right?
Yeah,
and I'm invoking these ideas of like all these Velveteen Rabbit, etc. That the object becomes invested with love,
right?
But then time changes, the person changes, and the object gets discarded.
But she isn't. It's her mother's doll.
Yes,
and
exactly.
so we can't. As much as we keep being like, we wanted more from this movie, like we have to still respect some of the parameters of the storytelling.
I understand that. I understand that. But just to close out the point here, the images of intergenerational play that we got, or of authentic childhood play that we got, were in those quick sequences when we finally learn that the mother is sad and why. And then in the end, where we get like this kind of like, and it's even done with like that kind of like 8mm sort of like film stuff, glossy, overexposed 1970s stuff of kids playing, and maybe even there's footage of of Gerwig or other people playing. It's not just the kids, but to me that had much the same effect of like that quick montage that made me so angry in the Captain Marvel movie too, where it's like here are these little stand-ins of actual human beings doing things that involve love and loss,
and
we're gonna give it to you as like a hyper sped up TikTok slideshow.
Yeah.
And that was, so there, in some ways, both worlds were equally false. And it didn't seem to, that point didn't seem to like underscore the broader contingency of the gendered constructions in any meaningful way. Yeah.
Well, those quick cuts happen while Barbie is traversing the Lacanian reel with the Geist of Mattel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Fuck, man.
So,
there you go.
And also, this point where they do the reveal that the sad feelings are coming from the mother and not from the daughter.
America Ferrera, who does a great job.
Yeah,
right?
she's great.
Yeah. I think this is the point. That's the point where I appreciate Greta Gerwig's writing of mother-daughter relationships. They really are, to me as a dude, I can connect to them in ways that I can't connect to other writing. She just has a way of cutting to the quick where I got a little weepy at some of those moments.
Yeah.
It worked on me. I felt it. But it's also the point in the movie where I realized I had the same revelation as you, Patrick, where I thought we're going to learn about death and misery through a plaything. That's going to be powerful. This is fun. I love seeing that kind of thing explored. Once that twist happens where it's actually about the mother, it was a part of my brain settled into, okay, this is not about people. This is just about Barbie.
Well,
The
it's just
entire
about
movie is-
marketing. It's just about who's buying the movie tickets.
Right. It is just about Barbie. And it's at that point where people who were expecting it to hold a magnifying glass up to society through the entire runtime of the movie, it's like halfway through, they put that magnifying glass down and it just turns into a commercial for the rest of the film.
Let's talk about the other important thing that happens when Barbie's in the real world, which is Ken discovers patriarchy.
Yeah.
Which is really funny. I love the library scene. The library scene was great.
I mean, this is humorous.
Yeah.
And this is clever. And it is a nice way of exploring the flip side of microaggressions, of being made to feel lesser, right?
You respect me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hilarious thing, and this is the part where I'm like, is Greta Gerwig reading Little Hans? Is like the fact that patriarchy for Ken is actually all about horses.
Once he finds out it's not about horses, he says he's not actually that interested.
Okay.
Why didn't Barbie tell me about patriarchy, which, to my understanding, is where men and horses run everything?
Sure.
I shall seek my fortune there.
All right.
There was something going on too. So they get to LA and specifically they get to the beach. And I mean, look, there's some interesting stuff like,
which is Ken's home turf.
Yes.
Right?
And Ken,
Beach.
he beaches. Ken rapidly learns that, well, I think we can't undersell how actually, I think very interesting. They're like dialogues where basically they're going around and they're relating their phenomenological experience of being in the world. And like Barbie's like, I feel like everyone's looking at me and I feel a sense of like, it has a negative valence even. Like it's a little overwritten in that way, but like it's deliberately, again, it's too clever, right?
Ken feels flattered and she feels an undertone of violence.
Yeah, and she's like,
I actually thought that was kind of nicely done.
It was nicely done. But it was like Twitter gaggish, right? It was good. Don't get me wrong on this, right? And I think it was very, very good. But then also, so they, among other things, they realized that they cannot be walking around in the hot pink 80s, rollerblades type stuff.
Which is weird because that stuff is totally back.
Exactly. They get new clothes, but then they can't pay for the clothes, so they run. They keep getting arrested. The police are very amusing to them and tell them to keep the stolen things, which would never actually fucking happen, right? This is LAPD, where the LAPD has fucking gangs and they kill people to pledge in, blood out. Excuse me. Fuck that and fuck them. Independent of that, though, like the scenes where basically Ken walks around in an outfit that looks like John Voight from Midnight Cowboy, right? Except somehow even more sort of like queer coded is like kind of remarkable because one, like, and I'm not sure how to process it. Like on the one hand, he walks around and he rapidly consumes the way in which the world is constructed around the male gaze and men are at the center of it. He sees the images of Bill Clinton, of people trading stocks, of the American flag,
Ronald Reagan,
of Sly Stallone in Rocky wearing the fur coat. And he's clearly overjoyed by this.
Yes.
Right. But then also
by the way, this is one of the few times you can actually relate to somebody in this film, which is distressing.
Yes. But then also he has this encounter of like trying to find a job. Right. And everyone's like, the lifeguard's like, So he's like, I just beach. And the lifeguard's like, can you swim? Like, no, I don't know how to do that. Right. Or like I think he goes to like some like big business, maybe it's Mattel or something. It's like, can I become an executive? And they're like, well, you need to have, an MBA from Wharton or something. And Ken's like, well, I'm a man. Like, doesn't that mean anything? And the dude is like, well,
PhDs. Isn't being a man enough?
Actually, right now, it's kind of the opposite.
You guys are clearly not doing patriarchy very well.
No, no, we're doing it well. Yeah, we just hide it better now.
Oh.
Which is again like, no, okay, great, good for you. Like, fuck you. Again, I was like, fuck you. Like, that means whatever. But what was interesting about this was like,
again, not having a point of view while being didactic all at the same time.
Yeah. Irony without any edges, or irony with edges that cut in like they're blunt in this way. Like, it doesn't. You get to laugh it off because it moves so quickly, right? But like, I wondered about this because in some respects, like, there is something, and I know this probably wouldn't be the movie for it, but there is something interesting about like the misfit or the lack of fit between Ken and the men that he sees around him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, I mean, I think Christine says this in her article, right? That there's no anorexia or anything like that. Like,
well, that there's no, like, that they make a nod to the sort of like, oh, there's going to be slightly more, inclusive images of Barbie.
Yeah.
But yeah, no one, Christine does say, where is it? She says, if anyone uttered the word anorexia, I missed it.
Yeah. And when we meet America Ferrera's daughter, so America Ferrera is Gloria, and we meet her daughter, I think it's Ariana Greenblatt, who does a very good job, among other things.
Yeah,
I think she rapidly, again, in this like too jaded by half, like tween thing is like, well, you're responsible for like heterosexist patriarchal like body standards and body shaming, and she ends up by calling her a fascist, was also felt a little right wing. Like, that was a little fucked too. Like, again, it was like she was coded as woke for people who think woke is a term to levy against people who are annoyingly concerned with social justice and isms. In other words, like, this is there's an ugliness there.
There really was. There really was.
Yeah.
And
she was a stereotype. Yeah.
She was a stand-in for critics that wouldn't like this movie.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'm thinking about her and her absence of play, and we understand, given her age, like why she's not playing with Barbie. But the other thing that, is of interest, there are many things that are of interest psychoanalytically, but the one that's like a big kind of word cluster situation here is like dreams. We talk a lot about dreams. They are, as longtime listeners know, they are the royal road. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to the unconscious. And she doesn't have any dreams necessarily. Her mother has dysmorphic fantasies. And yet the idea of like the dreams of little girls are being invoked all over. And it's sort of like, well, is it the dreams? Like, I know that I'm being literal in some ways when I'm talking about it in a psychoanalytic context, because we are talking about like things that happen when you're asleep. And here it's being leveraged more in terms of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But this whole movie is a fever dream, right? So I do think it's fair to kind of elide these two and at least think about them together. And again, it's sort of like the impoverishment of the possibilities of imagining what it could be to be a child, to be a woman. And then so when we get, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead, but whatever, Ken discovers patriarchy. Then we go back to we got to go back to Barbie Land, where all of a sudden Barbie Land has become, patriarchy, and Barbie gives up, and then America Ferrera gives the speech.
Yes.
Okay. And it is the speech about how it is impossible to be a woman, which is a narration of a series of double binds, all of which are true.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Like none of this, I don't think anyone here is going to be like, this isn't the case. But if you are going to give us a fever dream and a commercial, and then you're going to give us this sort of like tired set of talking points for the impossibility of being a woman, when this is literally an ad for one of the single greatest vectors of showing women how it's impossible to be a woman, like, then I just want to throw up and puke and die all at once. Like that's just, and especially like this, it hits hard because women around the country got dressed up to go to this movie. It was like, we're making this for you. Finally, you could also, it's not Oppenheimer, like Oppenheimer's for boys. Everything else is for, like the MCU. It's all we're doing. This is what you get. And it is such fucking thin gruel. And then there's one token. Let's stand up for what we believe in. And what we believe in is that the best that we can do is to just be capitalist realism Barbie. Well, fuck that.
Yeah.
That is like the real deflation of the possibility of dreaming.
It's worth saying I think this is, I want to repeat what you're saying and underscore, and also say too, like
but not take credit for it.
No,
right?
not at all.
That's a joke.
Right, no,
that's a joke.
Okay. Oh, good. I think I'm like, look, like
I don't always get to get up on my high horse.
No,
yes, that's a horse joke.
I mean, like one thing, I just want to like circle back to one thing to further underscore something, right? This is a movie that's all about dreams and playfulness.
Yeah.
But the dreams are understood fundamentally as careerist.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Here is the job you get to have.
Drone strike
You
President
are your job.
Barbie.
And in the
best
world
thing
of
you could
Barbie
have.
Land,
yeah.
the people who are the sanitation workers are equally as happy and equally as celebrated as the presidents and the doctors. Right? Now, that's not me saying that people who are sanitation workers should be under-celebrated or should be miserable, but rather that this is a fantasy in which there is still hierarchy and inequality, but it's all flattened by this kind of like positive, well, like girl talk type stuff, right? This like, hey Barbie, hey Barbie, hey Barbie. Like it's like that old Zizek joke about like the bourgeois and the proletarians coming together to recognize their differences, sing kumbaya, and then like be like, we can coexist now. It's like, no, structural relationships of exploitation are not like trivial differences within a category. They're differences of category that exist antagonistically, right? But be that as it may, at no point, and I tried really hard to look for this, and I watched the entire movie as a sober Methodist because I didn't want to miss it. And maybe that was part of my problem. Yeah, I really, at no point is it revealed, one, Sasha, the girl, what her dreams or aspirations are.
No, other than to fix her mother.
To fix her mother's.
This is some dream of the gifted child shit right here.
She's a parental. We have no. So first, we don't know what her actual dreams are.
Drama of the gifted child.
Yeah, there's this whole thing going on when these Barbies exist to basically make possible and make real the ability of girls to self-actualize. We have a girl, and all she is jaded and angry, and the only thing that gives her any joy is retroactively fixing the problem of her mother. We also never see her authentically enjoy anything of her own generation either, right? We don't have her listening to like, I don't know what the fuck, like mumblecore dubstep, whatever the fuck the kids listen to these days. Like we don't get it. The only
I think
joy.
mumblecore was us.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to think of like this. Who are those Swedish like techno rappers who like keep overdosing on syrup, which they're somehow getting in Oslo? Like it doesn't. The SoundCloud rap shit. Whatever. The point here
we
is
just made ourselves sound a million years old.
No, just terminally. I mean, like, look. I mean, I understand part of what the problem is, right? Is that there is no monoculture anymore, right? And that's what this kid represents, right? But like, we don't even get a glimpse of what she enjoys in the present or what she wants to be in the future. The closest touchstones she has with her mother are threefold. One, it's fixing the Barbie problem. Two, it's smiling when the Indigo Girls come on in the car, finally. And then three...
I did like that.
I like that too. But note, it's nothing of her own. It's an inheritance.
Yeah.
But then three, the only other intervention she has is in this sequence in the weird Barbie house that Abby was just talking about. And this is where America Ferrera Gloria outlines all these double binds. Like you got to be focused on your grind, but you can't ask for money. You got to lead, but you can't be aggressive. All these different things, right? It's all totally true, right? And then one of the Barbies is immediately, all the brainwashed Barbies, or the Barbies who've adopted this subservient role of just like constantly offering brewskis to the Kens, snaps out of it. Like literally the articulation of these double binds is presented as actually undoing their false consciousness, so to speak. And the line is,
I had this written down. It was like, speech acts are not I was like, I'm sorry, is this Judith Butler here? Like, and Eve Sedgwick being like, I wonder about like the possibility of performative speech acts for thinking about gender. Otherwise, no, like that's not what's going on. There is this idea that simply by stating that these things are the case, all of a sudden, it's action proceeds from that.
The line is Ariana Greenblatt, America Ferrera launches into all these double binds. She articulates all the double binds, and then one of the Barbies says, "By giving voice to the," it's like,
wait, this is Margot Robbie. It's not one of the Barbies.
Oh, it's right. By giving voice to the cognitive dissonance required to be a woman under the patriarchy, you robbed it of its power.
This is where Patrick and I both started yelling.
That's where I started screaming, right? Yeah. Because that's the Zizek joke.
You actually even paused it so you could scream.
Like, I recognize the boss. The boss recognizes me, and now the boss no longer has power over me. Fuck you. That's not how it works, right? But then this is the real kicker, right? Is that happens, and then that becomes the thing that then radicalizes all the Barbies. Immediately thereafter, after Margot Robbie has said this, our Sasha character, the young girl who we know nothing about except that she's a negative Nancy, right? And who doesn't want anything to do with Barbie, says, "Hell yes, white savior Barbie," cynically. And then there's some sort of like undoing. Oh, no, it's not that, right?
Yeah.
By giving voice to the cognitive dissonance required to be a woman under the patriarchy, you robbed it of its power.
Yes. Wow, I just said all of that.
Hell yes, white savior Barbie. No, it was your mom. Your mom did the saving.
So what she does basically is she is brought in as a non-character to voice the stock, but still very correct critique that critics online, that kids these days would probably have, and that we all immediately saw had in doing this. Yep. She's brought in to ventriloquize this.
And then it can be neutralized.
And then it's immediately dismissed through
this
this ironic thing. And Margot Robbie is the white savior Barbie. In other words, her only role is to ratify as being liberatory a situation in which simply recognizing the stakes of power and then accepting them is supposed to transform them.
Yeah. Well said.
When I wake up in my own pink world, I get up out of bed and wave to my homegirls. Hey, Barbie, hey, she's so cool. All dolled up, just playing chess by the pool.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the frustrations that people have with this movie, that you guys are articulating about this movie, are frustrations that this like cultural object that got so popular, that so many, I mean, we can say, or at least I think, it was really nice to see a mainstream film event that so many people across generations crowded around and were excited about again.
Yeah.
I thought that was like really refreshing and nice. Yeah. A lot of, like, all my friends saw this. All of them were dressed in pink to go see it. All the guys were dressed in blue. And I felt like I did miss out on something by not going, because there's something special about a crowded theater for a big film event like this. But all that having been said, can I say that a lot of your frustrations come from the unavoidable lens of Mattel's board of executives and the power that they had over top of, like, I don't think this movie was allowed to say anything of substance or was allowed to say anything other than buy more Barbie shit. And the way this movie said that, I know it poked fun at these things being capitalist excess, and that I think they even somebody says in this movie that like you just want to commodify me or something like that. Like there's a whole indictment about commodity culture. And in this movie, they're like, ha ha ha, isn't that funny? Barbie's a commodity. And then by the end of the movie, they're kind of like whispering into your ear, but they're commodities that will change your parents' life if you like them. And these are commodities that will help you understand your children if you let them into your life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I think, one of the things I always tell my students is like, you can never let and I say that this is especially in like gender, women's, and sexuality studies. I'm like, there will be no text that will be able to hold the weight of your political expectations.
Totally.
Yes.
Like that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have political expectations. Like, please do. Right. And it is absolutely unfair for me to be like, Barbie, the film, should be able to be a worthy vessel for my feminist expectations. I don't think
of course not.
It is though, because it's like, do you remember when there was like a movie that was marketed towards women? Like when and it's this one. So that's like the reason for my ire is that is the it's the thinnest of gruels, and it is lapped up like it is, actual nourishment.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's so that's the part that's so upsetting. It's like, okay, so we build to this, like, this is a good little speech that America Ferrera has.
I thought it was really nauseating. I mean, it's well articulated and everything. Like it's clearly written sharp as a knife, but also like I can just imagine the audiences in the theaters, like people clapping at the end of it.
That's the part is like it is designed for you to lap up. And I think that there's a way in which this is also meant to be a sort of Trojan horse.
Yes.
Also, the sort of like, for women who actually are deeply, deeply invested in gender roles, maybe they will see something about the double binds of femininity here, and that could be liberatory
for men too.
Sure. I don't care about men as viewers, in the same sort of way.
Yeah.
I think y'all have a little bit more, I'm not worried about there being movies that are like, hey, men, you should be encouraged to dream.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't care about men as viewers. I care about both of you and probably some other men too.
Don't you feel privileged? I feel privileged.
But that's the part that's so upsetting. Even as I recognize that, like, probably this will land for some people for whom this will seem like radical feminism to see that the lives of women are radically constrained, but to do it in the same sort of breath as being like, this actually is what I'm sure no one else is talking about Barbie and Luce Irigaray in the same breath, but like what Luce Irigaray will call like a horizon for becoming, right? Barbie as a horizon for becoming is a vanishingly small horizon. Right? Especially because the movie is actually about Ken.
Yeah.
It's actually about Ken.
Yeah. I think just to underscore this, and I think to tie a bunch of things together, and like, look, like, we can very quickly just say, like, the realization of false consciousness radicalizes the Barbies such that they can play into the stereotype of being interested in the men who mansplain themselves and then become distracted by mansplaining and singing Matchbox 20, and then ultimately fight to one another such that the Barbies can have a coup where they retake control of their previously hijacked socius. Great.
Because the men forget to vote.
Meanwhile,
Ken's. Whatever.
Meanwhile, we have this other sort of B plot where everybody in the Mattel world, which is, by the way, a fantasy of Mattel, right? Yeah. Like, and it's a joking fantasy of Mattel where it's like, oh yeah, of course they're only men who work in the boardroom, and of course they've got, like Will Ferrell being Mr. Mugatu from the Zoolander movies, being the goofy CEO here too, and
which is done well.
He does a good job of it, right?
Yeah.
But then in the end, in the resolution, and I keep wanting to go back to this, like, let's recognize our differences because differences are what's make us beautiful. And I'm the mind boss, and you're the mind worker, and it is not wonderful that we have these two different cultures, right? He then says. And again, this is one of these things that would be damning and devastating if not for the fact that it was so glib and quick and stated to set it aside.
But thanks to the Barbies, I too can now relieve myself of this heavy existential burden while holding on to the very real title of CEO. And we can restore everything in Barbie Land to exactly the way it was.
Mr. Mattel,
please, call me Mother.
No, thank you.
Like, finally, I can let go of this heavy existential burden while still holding the very real power of CEO. And like, yes, I get it. That is deeply subversive. And it's the type of thing that I would write. That's the type of thing that I would joke on Twitter watching this movie. Right. And she's
gotten out ahead of it.
She's gotten out ahead of it. Right. But when I think about this, like, if you think about it for more than a few minutes, right? If you don't let yourself get caught up in the cavalcade of colors and outfits and scene cuts, and then that rapid pivot to like what substitutes for actual character stuff, which is in with this family video shit, again, a la Captain Marvel, you suddenly realize, oh, the person with power, what he's articulating there is a double bind too, but he gets to have it both ways.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, it's the
he gets to tickle all of the people, and and he gets to have all of these traditionally feminine ways of relating. This is, by the way, I wanted to say, I kept thinking about Moira Donegan and Adrian Dobbs' recent the first episode of their like masculinity series on In Bed with the Right pod. About like debunking the sort of the there's a male loneliness crisis.
Yes.
Which is basically like, oh, hey, women are catching up to men and men are feeling really bad about it. I'm being very glib, but whatever. You should listen to that episode.
So like the Barbies basically traverse the fantasy to the extent to which they then wind up in the same place that they were at the beginning, but slightly different. Whereas the power of the people, but that becomes just another, not just an edifying spectacle, but literally a profit-making enterprise for the people who are above that and who get to have it both ways. I'm like, there's no double bind for them, right?
No.
In fact, there's just a golden parachute, and they're like, oh yeah, actually, ordinary Barbie's going to make us a ton of money, and this might seem subversive. Right? On some level, it might seem subversive.
Because women don't have to be perfect. They can just be ordinary Barbie.
Exactly. But there's something about the fact, and this is also like, I want to, look, we're not trying to yuck people's yums, or at least,
I am.
For its own sake, but also I think we kind of want to say that, like, look, from my perspective, at least, I don't think any artistic or aesthetic products are capable of being enjoyed without some degree of relationship to the political.
Sure.
Right. And in fact, I would say that part of my yum, I won't yuck your yum per se, but a lot of my yum involves thinking about political and aesthetic products in terms of relationships of power and doing ruthless critiques of everything existing. And that's probably why people are listening to this in some part, right? Like, so like, we can hold these different opinions, and we can also acknowledge things like, as we did with the Avengers, that there are a lot of young people out there who maybe actually like deal with bullying or gender dysphoria or whatever it is that they need to, the struggles that they're facing in their life by, say, I don't know, identifying with the X-Men or with the Hulk or whatever. Like, I'm not cheapening that, right? I'm not cheapening their experience. What is actually cheap, though, and lucrative at the same time is the gestalt of the media framework that they get. And it both, in a way that the Marvel films do too, right? It positions itself as subversive. It positions itself as the underdog when in fact it's hegemonic, when in fact it actually is really violent. And I think that seems to me to be a really sort of difficult upshot. And I want to say the one last thing here too, like, yes, that is a subversive, that line where basically Will Ferrell's like, oh yeah, the white men who run this company come out ahead. Yeah. We haven't had a woman CEO in many, many years.
Yeah.
So like, wow, that's really nice. Mattel pokes some fun at itself. If you sit down at the terminal and you Google Mattel lawsuits, sexual harassments, you will find some very interesting things about systematic practices of sexual assault and violence throughout the factories that make Barbies in China. And not just in China, you will find out a lot about ongoing lawsuits involving gender discrimination, ageism, and other things in the Mattel workplace that are happening right now, right? So in some ways, like, even the jokey fantasy of we're the patriarchs, we're all men who work here, but we got Greta Gerwig to do with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
That is them doing patriarchy better.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the end is Barbie's give up power to Ken's, right? Because there can't even be one sort of place in the cultural imaginary where men are not the ones who are at least equally represented, right? So it's sort of like Ken gives an apology right after he has this whole existential crisis, and Barbie gives. I was like, what the fuck? It's the Barbie movie. Why is Barbie apologizing?
He becomes a Ken going his own way.
And of course, at the end, Barbie wants to become human, and there's this moment where we get a nod to, the objectification of women. And the part I thought, this is like a real free association, but I thought about A.S. Byatt's book Possession, and I thought about which I will not talk about too much because it's very, very long. But there's two heterosexual couples, one that is in like the contemporary moment, and one where that couple, which is a pair of academics, they're reading their letters and they're discovering this romance between two poets, in two Victorian poets, and the woman breaks up with the man by saying like something like it's about the constraints of this relationship, and she's like, I want to be a poet and not a poem, right? And that's sort of what I was thinking about at the end, where Barbie is like, I don't want to be like, she's like, I want to have the ideas, not be the idea. And that's nice, right? In some way.
And it's positioned against Ken's pretty much saying, I want you in my life because I'm better when you're looking at me.
Right. And so, but again, what that tries to do is this sort of false equivalence where it's like, Ken is actually the one who's had to attend to, all of the sort of like trappings of selfhood without ever having a self, which is like this is a classic problem of femininity. I mean, this is like Mary Wollstonecraft is talking about like, okay, well, if like the ideas of women like hover ever about their persons, which is, something that Barbie has done quite a lot to make us do, well, then how can you actually end up being like a virtuous self? And yet we get Ken is the one who he's like, I only see myself in your own gaze. And it's like, that's the problem of Barbie. Okay. So we get this sort of like rapprochement here at the end between the Kens and the Barbies under the sign of Ken actually being the best embodiment of traditionally coded feminine problems. He's the one, of course, Ken is the paradigmatic woman. What I was saying, I was turned to Patrick and I was like, okay, what is this film actually doing?
Yeah.
And what is it doing in 2023? I understand that it was, it was even pre-pandemic before they decided to do this. This is clearly an undertaking of many years.
2018.
Yeah. But like a few years before that is when Time had the like trans tipping point cover. It has only been in the last less than 10 years where outside of a fairly small set of communities and academic discourses, we have started to think about gender as other than binary. And now we have this film that is like above all what gender is like you can be a Barbie or you can be a Ken. Like, I mean, I suppose you can be an Alan. My hot take is that Alan is like, if like in the Communist Manifesto, the way is that like there's got to be like one member of the bourgeoisie that like deliberately joins the proletariat. That's Alan. There, Alan makes himself to be a Barbie. But I do think that this film can be read as a reaction formation against the broader mainstream acceptance that gender is fluid. And it's not really that much of a surprise that as the idea that patriarchy is a thing that harms men too makes its way also into our cultural consciousness. Now we have this film, which actually seems to still say that patriarchy hurts men more.
Yes.
Than anyone else.
You're 10.
But it's Barbie and Ken. There is no just Ken. That's why I was created. I only exist within the warmth of your gaze. Without it, I'm just another blonde guy who can't do flips.
There's also this thing where it's like the film is, I was trying to think about like what wave of feminism is this working with, right? And I kept on coming back to the mental image of the plastic waves on the beach that are sort of static and not going anywhere, and even John Cena is frolicking in them, right? But there, I think, Abby, you're saying something that I haven't heard elsewhere, and that I think really is the underlying cause of what this is a symptom of, right? Which is this way in which, like, well, we've already established that this film is not actually really about children and child's play or actually existing children now. It's about nostalgia of adults and specifically of women for their own experiences of play and for what they understood to be their moment of liberation as experienced by political and also like playful dimensions, i.e. this idea you don't have to just pretend to be a mom with a baby doll. You can pretend to be a career woman, right? Mm-hmm. But by the same token, it seems to suggest both that can be recuperated, as if nothing else has happened since, but also that the touchstone that you can have with your kids is giving them back that, right? In other words, like this film, which is so legible in some ways in terms of a very retrograde battle of the sexes binary.
Yeah, straight up. I was thinking about like Catherine McKinnon and Andrea Dworkin and the sort of rhetoric of like their that fundamentally there is no rapprochement.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems to offer the solution it offers. It denies the existence of non-binary or like gender fluidity type stuff. And the nostalgia that it seems to really want to cater for is one, a nostalgia for hegemonic binary sexuality, heteropatriarchy.
Yeah.
Right. Even as a use, and like literally there's a way in which the way the way Sasha is coded as like smart ass, like 2-tumbler woke, right, is literally, I think she's getting out ahead of it to neutralize that, right? She's in some ways, that young girl is more of a stereotype than any of the other characters in the movie, and that I think is a truly damning thing. But beyond that, if the nostalgia is for the binary, right, it seems to suggest that the way we can connect, or the way that the audience can connect with their children, is by resurrecting that binary.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the dream. So that's what we've been looking for. Like, they keep talking about dreams. What is it?
Yeah. Why can't you and I play with my old Barbies, and you can envision the career woman that you want to be? Right. And again, the exclusions, you can't be your son who wants to play with Barbies. It can't be, the person who you're addressing as your daughter, but who has, is trans.
There's also no fathers.
There's no fathers.
There's no fathers in the whole film.
There's a kind of tragically past oriented solipsism in this. Like, the waves are rolling backwards, and the pain is real. The nostalgia is real. Like, there is a kernel of tragedy in the campiness of, like, even of Ken being like, wow, actually being a man, I can't actually do shit. Right. There's a kind of tragic, there's a kind of tragedy too in, like, where the movie ends, where Margot Robbie basically gets to meet the real of the female body. Like, she's so happy going to meet her gynecologist. I mean, God knows what those tests are going to show, right? Like, she's made of plastic. Like, we're all worried.
She's human now.
Well, yeah, I guess. But if she's human, that also means she's probably as made of microplastics as the rest of us. So, like, she could be, like, whatever is going on with, like, the smear or the test could be very, very dark, right? But, like, there is some way in which, like,
I'd call that a radical interpretation of the text.
I know, but like, congratulations, Margot Robbie, you are made of forever chemicals. You are now human.
We're all little Barbie.
Yeah. But there is this way in which, like, it's like, why can't we, it's these coded elements of, like, why can't we all just go back to this binary? Why can't these kids relate to us through the binary?
Yeah.
But that's not the problem that the kids are facing.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what they necessarily need. And so for a film that's all about uplifting dreams and voices, there are actually these enormous lacunae and erasures. But even more than that, it's marginalized, made fun of. And the very kind of, like, fast-paced millennial patter of it works to further delegitimize the possibility of an outside or of any alternatives.
Yeah.
And again, like,
that's why I keep calling it capitalist realism Barbie.
Yeah.
Like ordinary Barbie. Like, it is about not being able to think outside this very narrow horizon.
It's the desert of the nostalgic real, and there's no sexual relationship there at all.
Has been an episode of Ordinary Unhappiness, a podcast about psychoanalysis, politics, pop culture, and the ways we suffer now. I'm Abby Kluchin, and today I was joined by Patrick Blanchfield and Dan Yowell. This podcast is produced by Dan Yowell. Theme music by Formal Chicken.